Welcome to Love, Laughter, and Limits. I'm Tom Dozier, and this lesson is Pivot, Purposeful or Planned Ignoring. This class will teach you how to classify inappropriate child behavior as either junk, meaning inconsequential, or consequential behavior. This class will teach you how to respond to that irritating junk behavior to reduce its occurrence. I want to give credit to the Florida Behavior Analysis Services Program and to Dr. Glenn Latham for most of the material that's found in this class. Now, in another class I talked about parent attention. I want to briefly summarize that again. Parent attention almost always increases child behavior. It's a reinforcing payoff. And what determines the reinforcing value of that attention that you give your child? Well, there's 5 characteristics, and each one contribute to the overall value of the payoff. So approaching the child, are you coming into the room, coming close to the child? How much touch is there in the process of this? And it can be soft, gentle touch, or it can be wrestling touch. How many words do you use? How long does it take? How much time? And then how much emotional intensity is there? And it doesn't matter if it's super happy, exuberant, joyful emotion, or if you're about to blow a gasket, screaming and yelling emotion. The emotional intensity is a contributor to the overall value of the parent attention as a reinforcer. Now, the greater the value of these 5 components, or some combination of these components, the greater the reward for that behavior, and the more likely that the behavior will happen again. So we want to be careful about giving our attention to behavior that we don't want to have happen again. And that's exactly what Pivot is all about. So what is this junk behavior, this inconsequential behavior? Well, junk behavior is any age-typical behavior that's usually annoying to the parent, but it's not really harmful to the individual, to others, or to the property. Now, some examples of this inconsequential junk behavior that annoys us, it bugs us, and it frustrates us, but it doesn't do real harm, beyond the moment that it's occurring. Things like whining, both types. Whining where the kid comes up and this nasally, "Oh, Mom, can I have a drink of water, please?" And they used to drive my wife nuts. Or whining, meaning refusing to take no for an answer. "Oh, please, but I really want a cookie." "No, you may not have a cookie right now." "Oh, but oh," and they go on and on. That's whining also. Once again, it's a junk behavior. Complaining, something they don't like this or they don't like that. Generally, tantrums fall into this category of junk behavior. Hitting, but with restraint. They're kind of, they're hitting each other and they're poking, but they're not trying to do bodily harm. Right? Mild forms of sibling rivalry. Potty talk. Blurting out a profane word. Fake crying. It may even seem real, but fake crying. Things in general, if it doesn't damage or destroy, and if it's not cruel or evil, then it's most likely a junk behavior. Now, consequential behavior is serious behavior. It's serious inappropriate behavior. It hurts, damages, or destroys, or it's cruel, or you might call it evil, really bad behavior. Hitting to hurt, trying to hurt the other person. Purposefully breaking things, but also I found that accidentally breaking things when the behavior is prohibited, like kicking a ball in the house and breaking something. You have to address it. Moderate to severe sibling rivalry, things that's going too far. Saying mean and hurtful things that really strike to the core of a kid. Not just calling somebody butthead or stinky breath or, you're an old meanie or I hate you. That's not consequential. That's junk. But having a 4-year-old scream at the 2-year-old little brother, "I hate you." Okay, that's over the top. And you as a parent have to make some decision in this as to what is over the top. Exploiting others, taking advantage of a sibling. There's an old family story. My mom is now 92, and when she was a little girl, it was Depression era, and some relative would come by, and although it's inappropriate, he would give the two girls in the family each a nickel, and he would give the only boy a dime. And the older sister, my Aunt Valetra, who's now passed away, would tease her little brother Harry about having a big nickel. I've got a big nickel, you only have a little nickel. I'm so lucky, I have a big nickel, until he would beg to trade, and then of course she would trade with him. Well, that's taking advantage, that's exploiting someone, that's inappropriate. And then being too disruptive. If a kid is, all the attention is focusing on the child, or it's too disruptive for the setting, you have to deal with it. Now, why does this junk behavior happen? Well, there's a number of reasons. One is to get attention, just straight to get attention. You know, they want interaction of some sort, but also to get you to comfort them, which is a form of attention, to get you to respond or react, to get a rise out of you. You know, they're poking at you and they want to see if they can get to you. Especially teenagers. Older kids will do that. To make you angry. If they're mad and upset and they're not happy about something, then one way of getting even is to try to make you angry. To get you to give in to them. They figure if they can bug you enough, you'll give in and they'll get what they want. Maybe to make you go away. This sounds like teenage stuff, but to make you get upset, frustrated, and walk out and go away. Maybe they want to get you to do something for them. You know, maybe it is just a habit. Some of this stuff just becomes a habit. And it may just be an age-typical behavior. It may just be what kids do at this age. But it can still be irritating. Now, pivot comes from basketball move, that when you pivot in basketball, you've got the ball, and you can keep one foot in place, but you can turn away from the person who's coming after you to try to get the ball. And that's what we mean here by pivot, is to turn away from the bad behavior. And the pivot is also referred to as to ignore with a purpose. You want to just turn away from this junk behavior and go do something that's worthwhile. The kids are starting to fight and you say, oh, I better get dinner started. And you just go into the kitchen and start dinner. Oh, look what time it is. I said I was going to call Mrs. So-and-so. And you just turn and go make a phone call. But you leave behind no message that indicates that the kids got to you. See, if you stand there and glare and huff a little bit, and then you turn away, nah, they know they got to you. That's not pivot. You got to go do something with a purpose, get away from it. Now, if you'll just look at how long this junk behavior lasts, there's been some research that says that 81% of these junk behaviors go away in 30 seconds or less if you just don't pay them attention. And by 1 minute and 45 seconds, 92% of it will just go away. And so then the next step in pivot, and this is very key, is you want to look for an opportunity to acknowledge the appropriate behavior. You want to catch them being good when they have something good that's worth paying attention to that you want repeated. Now, if a child comes to you complaining about a junk behavior, oh, Mom, Susie's into my stuff and she's messing with all of my whatever, right? Then you want to be nice. You want to be the sweetest, kindest moms and dad around. And you want to turn to your sweet little child and say, oh, honey, I know that's really upsetting when she gets into your stuff. I am so sorry. Now, go work it out, honey. And you just prompt her to move on. right? And now, if you know it's going to blow up when she goes in there, you may need to help work to help them to deal with the situation. But if it's something just like, Susie hit me, she hit me, and it hurt so bad, and you just go, oh, I know that's really upsetting when she hits you. I'm so sorry. Now, go play, honey. And then you just send them on off, right? You may send them to a specific activity, or you just may prompt them to leave. And then you just go do something else, because they're liable to come chasing after you. And you want to just keep on moving. Maybe you have to go to the restroom every time that happens. But you just want to move on away and not give it a whole bunch of attention. If the child says, but aren't you going to go punish her? She deserves a spanking. You need to go get her right now. And you say, I know you're frustrated with your sister, and you would really like me to intervene, but I need you to just go and play nicely. And then you just move away. And then you want to look for the appropriate behavior and acknowledge it when it occurs. Now, if you have more than one child involved, you can give your attention to one of the children who's behaving one child who's behaving appropriately. You want to turn your attention to the appropriate behavior of another child and focus on that child exclusively, and wait for the first child to start doing some appropriate behavior. And when they start doing the appropriate behavior, you can turn back to them. And if the child is complaining, you can give some empathy to the child who's misbehaving, but you still want to give your attention to the child that's behaving appropriately. I had a mom in my class who reported that it was Christmas time. She got home from work. She said, hey kids, let's get your homework done so we can go to the mall and do some Christmas shopping. That sounds like fun, right? You'd hope the kids say, okay. No, the 9-year-old says, I'm not doing my homework. I hate school and I hate homework. So she gave him just a little bit of recognition. She said, well, I know you don't want to do homework, and you can deal with your teacher about it. And she turned over to the 7-year-old and said, hey, honey, what's your homework assignment? The 7-year-old pulled out her backpack, and pulled out her papers and her books, and Mom started focusing on the 7-year-old. Just a few minutes later, she looked around. 9-year-old's down at the other end of the table doing his homework. And so she wanted to give him some positive recognition. She said, hey, thanks for getting started on your homework. As soon as we're done, we'll go to the mall and have some fun. And it was just that quick. Now, how long could she have talked to that 9-year-old about the importance of homework, the importance of school, how it didn't matter whether he liked it or not. This was a life lesson that he needed to learn to do hard things. There's all kinds of ways this discussion could have gone, but it would have just been attention for inappropriate behavior. Now, if you turn to another child and there's some appropriate and inappropriate behavior going on there, all inappropriate here, a mixture over here, just focus on what's appropriate. And then when you see a more appropriate behavior, turn to it. Because junk behavior lives for parent attention. It just lives for it. So here's some key points that younger children love to be pivoted to. They love the attention. And you don't want to mention the other child. You don't want to say, oh, well, honey, I'm glad you're doing your homework unlike your brother. See, that was acknowledging his inappropriate behavior. You don't want to do that at all. You just say, oh, what's your assignment? Oh, that's so great. Thank you. Now, older children, you have to be subtle and make sure you're not giving a message in the pivot. See, if this was a 14 or 15-year-old who was complaining about their homework, and I turned to the younger sibling and said, oh, well, I'm so happy that you're doing your homework and that you appreciate and value an education. Now, that message is really directed back at the older teenager, and that kid's liable to yell at you, because they're getting a little lecture in the process. Pivot is not about giving a lecture. It's just about giving your attention and not giving it to the things that you don't like. So you can also pivot with things other than your attention with some goodies. I was a scoutmaster for a group of 14 and 15-year-old scouts, and we were having an activity at my home. It was for Citizenship in the World Merit Badge, so we had a foreigner coming to my home. We were going to meet at our normal meeting spot at the church building, and I go in and I see some of my scouts running and giggling. They're running away from me. They're hiding. They're going to make a game of chase with their scoutmaster. I decided I wasn't going to play that game. I saw a couple of boys that were right there, and I said, "Hey guys, come on, let's go to my house and get started on this merit badge." And they were willing to come with me. My assistant scoutmaster was there, and I said, "Hey, round up the other boys and come on over when you're done." And we went to my house, so the first thing we did is we broke out a bowl of ice cream for everyone there. And we were just finishing our ice cream when the other boys came in. And you know, none of them complained about it. None of them said, "Hey, where's my ice cream?" You know? They kind of knew that they had been out of line and it wasn't going to happen. So you can use privileges and stuff also more than just your attention. Some other points to remember. You want to always focus on the positive. Like, "Well, I really like the way you're sitting so quietly." Especially if this is a child who was misbehaving, instead of saying something like, "Well, I'm glad you stopped making so much noise." What's the matter with that? You see, I'm identifying the junk behavior that I didn't like, and the child is knows that they got my attention with it. If you state the junk behavior, then they know that you noticed it. And so they may have gotten enough payoff just for that. You want to avoid conflict and coercion in this. You know, this is a way of just turning away and avoiding the "stop that right now," blah, 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 and the grouchy parent that you can be. You know, it may be less stressful for you as a parent, but it also may be really hard for you as a parent. I had a mom say, "I know that Pivot is doing something, otherwise it wouldn't be so hard." You know, one of the things that some of the parents have found that they can do is they can, instead of saying something about what the child is doing, is go write it down, make a note. You see, we don't pivot because the behavior is okay or we don't mind the behavior. We pivot because we want it to go away. And that really is doing something of not paying it off. And the big key is that this really prevents the payoff for the bad behavior. That's what Pivot is designed to do, because the majority of this junk behavior happens for your attention, and so if you just turn away from it, you're not paying it off. We call it, purposeful ignoring. And one of the points here is that we go and do something, we have a purpose in what we're going and doing. But the other point here is the purpose of this is to make things better. Right? We want to have that problem behavior to go down, and so not paying it off is a way of having it go down. The behavioral principle here is called extinction. And one thing you need to be aware of is that with extinction, you can sometimes get a behavior burst. Now, extinction, if you'll remember, is where you stop giving the payoff that the child is used to getting. And so, because they've been used to getting that same payoff every time, when the payoff all of a sudden doesn't happen, well, they can escalate the behavior. They'll do it again and again, or they'll do it more severe. And in fact, they may escalate until you just can't ignore it. And there's good research that says that you can't just use Pivot, because if you do, kids are going to escalate and they're going to get to you. So one of the solutions to avoid this behavior burst phenomenon is to give the child a way of getting attention that he wants and he needs, but through some appropriate behavior. or just unconditionally, just some fun time with you and the child, 10 or 15 minutes a day, that has no connection to what they're doing. So a couple of stories. I was in a church meeting at the back watching this happen. A little 2-year-old came up to his dad and stuck both hands in his mouth. He had at least 8 fingers in his mouth. And yet he was just out of arm's reach from his dad. And his dad reached out and said, "Oh, stop that." And just before the dad could get to him, he ducked back, pulled his hands down, walked away, pulled a little circle, and came back within 15 seconds, stuck all fingers back in the mouth again. See, he had created a new game with Dad. I was in a family situation at the in-laws' house. We didn't really know them. It was one of the, we hadn't had much to do with each other. But it was a big family event. We were having a big dinner, and I had been asked to say a blessing on the food. And we were all gathering in this large dining room, living room area. And all of a sudden, from the far corner, I hear the screams and cries of a young child, about 3 years old. And a mom goes carrying out the screaming child. And then I hear a 5-year-old girl fussing. And they said, "Sarah, settle down. Sarah, we're getting ready to say a prayer. Sarah, be reverent. We're going to pray now." She wasn't having anything to do with it. So I looked around the room, saw a little boy over here. I said, "Hey, what's your name?" He says, "Harold." I said, "Harold, thank you for being so reverent. And what's your name?" He said, "Josh." I said, "Josh, thank you for getting ready for the prayer." And I turned around. I said, "Sarah, thank you for being so reverent." And she was just standing there, arms folded, ready to pray. And then I just said the prayer. Now, I wasn't watching Sarah because I was totally focusing on the appropriate behavior, but others in the room were. And what I found is that as soon as I started talking to Harold and said, "Oh, Harold, thank you for being so reverent," she settled down and she got ready. And she was, she knew what was expected, and that she wasn't getting attention for acting up. Now, I could have just said, "Thank you, thank you." The room was quiet. I could have gone ahead and said the blessing on the food, but I wanted to take the opportunity to notice Sarah's appropriate behavior, because that's part of what we want to do with Pivot, is we want to not pay off the junk behavior, but we want to give the child the payoff for appropriate behavior. We want to give them attention for appropriate behavior. And that's exactly what I did with Sarah. Worked like a charm. I was, the first day of my internship practicum as a behavior analyst, I was in a special day class that had about first graders. They had some kinds of handicap. It was a mild to moderate class. And I was walking from the front of the class to the back of the class. I was about, 5 to 10 feet in front of this boy, and he popped his pants and his underwear down. Pop! Now, that's a behavior designed to get attention in most settings. I didn't look down. I didn't slow down. I kept right on walking to the back of the class. Why? Was it because that I didn't care about the behavior? No. It was because I didn't want to give attention to an inappropriate behavior that would keep it happening. So I walked right onto the back of the class, head up, and I glanced over my shoulder, pulled up his pants, went on, and he never did it again. Okay, so that's the power of Pivot, especially with one-of behaviors. I was working with this mom and stepdad situation about their teen and the terribly inappropriate behavior of this teen. For example, she would be supposed to put away the dishes after dinner, and she would say something like, "Well, I'll put away your dishes, Mom, but I'm not going to put away stepdad's because he's scummy." And he was one of the nicest guys you could ever meet. And Mom would always rise to it and try to make her put his dishes away. And we talked about it, and I said, "Hey, she's just jerking your chain." Right? She's irritated at stepmom, and so she's being cruel to stepdad, or just hateful to stepdad, as a way of getting a rise out of Mom. I said, next time she does it, just say, "Okay, honey, I'll put his dishes away," and stand up, grab his dishes, and take them to the sink, and don't make a big deal of it. And as soon as she started doing that, the problem went away. So pivot is an amazing skill. We want to use it with kindness and care and empathy for our kids, but we want to use it strategically and not pay off this junk behavior, because we want the junk behavior to go away. That's why we're doing it. We're making a plan. There's a purpose in this, and it's to get rid of this annoying junk behavior. So what are the steps in pivot? First, you don't say or do anything about the junk behavior. You may make a caring and empathetic and understanding statement to the child who comes to you complaining, only if they're complaining to you. And then you want to actively give your attention to another child, a person, or an activity. There's some purpose in what you're doing. Go do something appropriate. And then you want to provide attention for the appropriate behavior of the child who is displaying the junk. They need that contrast, that we need to have a chance of catching them being good. You want to stay calm, don't get coercive, don't get critical or upset. Now, that's pivot. Why do we do it? Why do we call it purposeful or planned ignoring? Because the purpose of this ignoring is to get rid of this junk behavior. And you should make a plan at this. Think about it. Past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. So think about the things that your child did yesterday and the day before and the week before, and they're going to do it again. Decide which ones are junk, which ones are living for attention, and just don't pay it off. Now remember that this is just part of what you need to do, because you need to have a positive home environment and you need to pay off the appropriate behavior. So watch those lessons and make sure you're working at having the positive home environment and recognizing appropriate behavior. Thank you for watching Pivot, Purposeful and Planned Ignoring. I'm Tom Dozier, wishing you an abundance of love and laughter in your family, along with limits to help your children behave well and be happy. Thank you.